The sky above the bustling metropolis was a vast, unbroken expanse of blue, dotted with the occasional wisp of cloud. From the ground, it appeared serene, a tranquil canvas that belied the intricate dance of technology, precision, and human ingenuity taking place thousands of feet above. Airplanes crisscrossed the heavens, their contrails etching temporary scars into the azure backdrop, each one a testament to the marvel of modern aviation. Yet, on this particular day, the sky would bear witness to an event so catastrophic, so unthinkable, that it would ripple through the annals of flight history, leaving an indelible mark on the future of air travel. It was a day that would force the world to confront the fragility of its most trusted mode of transportation and ask, with bated breath, whether a mid-air collision could change flight safety forever. The morning had begun like any other. Air traffic controllers in the region's busiest control tower were at their posts, their eyes glued to radar screens that displayed a constellation of blips, each representing an aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers. The controllers spoke in calm, measured tones, their voices betraying none of the immense responsibility they bore. They were the unseen guardians of the sky, the ones who ensured that the delicate ballet of ascending and descending planes remained harmonious. But even the most skilled guardians are not infallible, and the system they operated within, though highly advanced, was not without its vulnerabilities. On this day, a series of seemingly minor missteps would converge to create a perfect storm, one that would shatter the illusion of invincibility that had long surrounded commercial aviation. The first plane was a wide-body jetliner, a behemoth of engineering capable of carrying over 300 passengers across continents. It was cruising at its assigned altitude, its autopilot system engaged, and its crew confident in the knowledge that they were following all prescribed protocols. The second plane was a smaller regional aircraft, a workhorse of the skies, ferrying passengers between cities with clockwork efficiency. It, too, was operating within its designated airspace, its pilots relying on the same air traffic control system that guided thousands of flights each day. The two planes were on intersecting paths, their trajectories calculated to keep them safely apart. But calculations, no matter how precise, are only as reliable as the data they are based on, and on this day, the data would prove tragically flawed. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a faint blip on the radar screen, a momentary flicker that might have been dismissed as a glitch under normal circumstances. But this was no ordinary day. The air traffic controller responsible for monitoring the sector where the two planes were converging hesitated, his attention divided between multiple aircraft and a flurry of routine communications. By the time he realized the gravity of the situation, it was too late. The two planes were on a collision course, their speeds and trajectories aligning in a way that defied the odds. The controller's voice, usually calm and authoritative, now carried a note of urgency as he issued instructions to the pilots. But the instructions, though clear, were not enough to avert disaster. The collision itself was a spectacle of unimaginable horror. At an altitude of 35,000 feet, the two planes met with a force that sent shockwaves through the sky. The larger jetliner's wing sheared through the fuselage of the regional aircraft, tearing it apart in a matter of seconds. Debris rained down from the heavens, a grim reminder of the fragility of human life. The larger plane, now critically damaged, began a slow, agonizing descent, its pilots fighting valiantly to maintain control. But the damage was too severe, and within minutes, both planes had vanished from the radar screens, leaving behind only silence and a growing sense of dread. On the ground, the news spread quickly, carried by the relentless churn of 24-hour news, cycles and social media. Eyewitnesses captured the aftermath on their smartphones, their shaky footage showing plumes of smoke rising from the wreckage. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, their efforts hampered by the sheer scale of the disaster. Families of the passengers waited anxiously for news, their hopes fading with each passing hour. The world watched in stunned silence, grappling with the enormity of what had just occurred. This was not supposed to happen, not in an age of advanced technology, not in a world where air travel was considered one of the safest modes of transportation. And yet, it had. In the days that followed, the investigation into the crash began in earnest. Experts from around the globe descended on the site, their mission to piece together the chain of events that had led to the tragedy. Black boxes were recovered, their data scrutinized for clues. Air traffic control recordings were analyzed, every word, every pause, every decision examined under a microscope. The findings were both illuminating and unsettling. The collision, it turned out, was the result of a combination of human error, technological limitations, and systemic failures. The air traffic controller, though experienced, had been overwhelmed by the sheer volume of traffic. The radar system, though state-of-the-art, had failed to provide a clear picture of the situation. And the pilots, though highly trained, had been unable to react in time. As the investigation progressed, a broader question began to emerge. Could this tragedy have been prevented? And if so, what changes needed to be made to ensure that such a disaster never happened again? The answers were not simple, but they were urgent. The aviation industry, long regarded as a paragon of safety, was forced to confront its own vulnerabilities. Calls for reform grew louder, with experts advocating for everything from improved training for air traffic controllers to the implementation of more advanced collision avoidance systems. The conversation extended beyond the industry itself, reaching into the halls of government and the offices of regulatory agencies. The stakes could not have been higher. The lives of millions of passengers depended on the decisions that would be made in the wake of this tragedy. And so, the world waited, holding its breath as the aviation industry stood at a crossroads. The mid-air collision had exposed flaws in the system that many had taken for granted, flaws that could no longer be ignored, but it had also sparked a renewed commitment to safety, a determination to learn from the past and build a better future. Whether this tragedy would change flight, safety forever remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the sky would never be the same. In the wake of the mid-air collision, the aviation industry found itself thrust into an unprecedented period of introspection and reform. The tragedy had not only claimed hundreds of lives, but had also shattered the collective confidence in a system that had long been regarded as the gold standard of safety. As investigators continued to pore over the wreckage and analyze data, the broader implications of the disaster began to take shape. The world was watching, and the pressure to act was immense. This was no longer just about assigning blame or identifying technical failures. It was about reimagining the very foundations of flight safety. The second chapter of this story would unfold not in the skies, but in the boardrooms, laboratories, and legislative chambers where the future of aviation would be forged. The first major development came from the regulatory agencies tasked with overseeing air travel. In a rare display of unity, international aviation authorities convened an emergency summit, bringing together experts from every corner of the globe. The agenda was clear: to identify the systemic weaknesses that had contributed to the collision, and to draft a comprehensive plan to address them. The summit was a somber affair, its proceedings marked by a sense of urgency and resolve. For days, the participants debated, deliberated, and dissected every aspect of the aviation ecosystem. They examined case studies of past incidents, reviewed the latest advancements in technology, and consulted with psychologists and human factors experts to better understand the role of human error. By the end of the summit, a series of recommendations had been drafted, each one aimed at preventing a similar tragedy from ever occurring again. One of the most significant proposals to emerge from the summit was the call for the widespread adoption of next-generation collision avoidance systems. These systems, which had been in development for years, represented a quantum leap in aviation safety. Unlike their predecessors, which relied primarily on ground-based radar and human intervention, the new systems utilized a combination of satellite technology, artificial intelligence, and real-time data sharing to create a more comprehensive and accurate picture of the airspace. Pilots and air traffic controllers would have access to real-time information about the location, speed, and trajectory of every aircraft in their vicinity, allowing them to make more informed decisions and react more quickly to potential threats. The technology was not without its challenges. Implementation would require significant investment, and there were concerns about cybersecurity and data privacy. But the potential benefits were too great to ignore. In parallel with these technological advancements, there was a growing recognition of the need to address the human factors that had played a role in the collision. Air traffic controllers, long the unsung heroes of the aviation industry, found themselves at the center of the debate. The investigation had revealed that the controller responsible for monitoring the sector where the collision occurred had been operating under immense pressure, juggling multiple tasks in a high-stakes environment. This was not an isolated case. Controllers around the world were facing similar challenges, their workloads increasing as air traffic continued to grow. In response, regulators proposed a series of measures aimed at reducing the burden on controllers and improving their working conditions. These included hiring additional staff, implementing more robust training programs, and introducing new protocols to ensure that controllers had adequate rest and support. The pilots, too, were the focus of renewed attention. While the investigation had found no evidence of negligence on their part, it had highlighted the limitations of human performance in high-stress situations. To address this, aviation authorities recommended the adoption of enhanced training programs that placed a greater emphasis on situational awareness, decision-making, and teamwork. Simulators, which had long been a staple of pilot training, were upgraded to more accurately replicate the complexities of real-world flying. Pilots were also encouraged to participate in regular psychological assessments and stress management programs, ensuring that they were mentally and emotionally prepared for the demands of their profession. As these changes began to take shape, the aviation industry found itself grappling with a broader philosophical question: how much control should be ceded to technology, and how much should remain in the hands of humans? The collision had exposed the limitations of both, and there was no easy answer. On one side of the debate were those who argued for greater automation, pointing to the potential for technology to eliminate human error and improve efficiency. On the other side were those who cautioned against over-reliance on machines, emphasizing the importance of human judgment and intuition. The truth, as with most things, lay somewhere in between. The challenge was to strike the right balance, creating a system that leveraged the strengths of both humans and machines while mitigating their respective weaknesses. Amidst these discussions, the families of the victims remained a powerful and poignant presence. Their grief was a constant reminder of the stakes involved, and their voices carried weight in the halls of power. Many of them became advocates for change, using their platforms to push for reforms and hold the industry accountable. They attended hearings, participated in public forums, and shared their stories with the media, ensuring that the human cost of the tragedy was never far from the minds of those tasked with preventing future disasters. Their efforts were instrumental in keeping the momentum for reform alive, even as the initial shock of the collision began to fade. Meanwhile, the technological and regulatory changes were beginning to take effect. Airlines around the world began retrofitting their fleets with the new collision avoidance systems, a process that was both costly and time-consuming, but widely regarded as essential. Air traffic control centers underwent similar upgrades, their aging infrastructure replaced with state-of-the-art equipment designed to handle the increasing complexity of modern air travel. Training programs were overhauled, and new protocols were put in place to ensure that controllers and pilots were better equipped to handle emergencies. The changes were not without their challenges. There were delays, cost overruns, and occasional resistance from those accustomed to the old ways of doing things. But the industry as a whole remained committed to the goal of making air travel safer than ever before. As the months turned into years, the impact of these changes began to be felt. The skies, once a source of fear and uncertainty, gradually regained their status as a symbol of human ingenuity and progress. Passengers returned to the air, their confidence bolstered by the knowledge that the lessons of the past had been learned and applied. The mid-air collision, though still a painful memory, became a catalyst for transformation, a turning point in the history of aviation. It was a reminder that safety is not a destination, but a journey, one that requires constant vigilance, innovation, and collaboration. And so, the story of the mid-air collision and its aftermath became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a story of tragedy and loss, but also of hope and renewal. It was a story that asked difficult questions and demanded difficult answers. And it was a story that, in the end, reaffirmed the enduring belief that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, we have the power to rise, to learn, and to build a better future. The skies, once scarred by disaster, were now a canvas for progress, a reminder that even the darkest clouds can give way to a brighter tomorrow. 5 years had passed since the mid-air collision that had shaken the aviation industry to its core. In that time, the skies had become a testament to human resilience and innovation. The reforms that had been set in motion in the aftermath of the tragedy had transformed the way the world thought about air travel. What had once been a system reliant on human vigilance and outdated technology had evolved into a marvel of modern engineering, a seamless integration of human expertise and cutting-edge innovation. Yet, as the industry continued to push the boundaries of what was possible, new challenges emerged, forcing it to confront questions that had once seemed the stuff of science fiction. The third chapter of this story would take place not in the aftermath of disaster, but on the frontier of a new era in aviation, one defined by artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and the ethical dilemmas that came with them. The most visible symbol of this new era was the rise of autonomous aircraft. Once confined to the realm of experimental prototypes and military applications, autonomous flight technology had made significant strides in the years following the collision. Unmanned cargo planes were now a common sight in the skies, their sleek, futuristic designs, a stark contrast to the traditional airliners that still carried passengers. These autonomous aircraft were powered by sophisticated AI systems capable of navigating complex airspace, avoiding obstacles, and making split-second decisions with a level of precision that no human pilot could match. They were hailed as the future of aviation, a solution to the challenges of human error and the growing demand for air travel. But their rise also sparked a heated debate about the role of humans in an increasingly automated world. The debate came to a head with the unveiling of the first fully autonomous passenger plane. Developed by a consortium of leading aerospace companies, the aircraft was a marvel of engineering, equipped with state-of-the-art sensors, machine learning algorithms, and redundant safety systems. Its creators touted it as the safest plane ever built, a machine that could eliminate the risk of human error and usher in a new era of air travel. But not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that the technology was not yet ready for widespread adoption, pointing to the potential for software glitches, cyber attacks, and unforeseen complications. They also raised ethical concerns, questioning whether passengers would be willing to entrust their lives to a machine and whether the industry was moving too quickly in its pursuit of progress. The first test flight of the autonomous passenger plane was a highly publicized event, watched by millions around the world. The aircraft, a sleek white jet with a distinctive blue stripe running along its fuselage, sat on the runway as engineers conducted final checks. Inside the control room, a team of technicians monitored the plane's systems, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. But their role was largely symbolic. The plane was designed to operate entirely on its own, from takeoff to landing. As the engines roared to life and the plane began its ascent, the world held its breath. The flight was smooth and uneventful, a testament to the capabilities of the technology. But it also raised a host of new questions about the future of aviation. One of the most pressing questions was what would become of the human pilots who had long been the face of the industry. As autonomous technology advanced, the role of the pilot was increasingly being reduced to that of a monitor, a backup in case the system failed. Some pilots embraced the change, seeing it as an opportunity to focus on higher-level tasks and reduce their workload. Others viewed it as a threat to their profession, a step toward obsolescence. Airlines, caught between the need to innovate and the desire to maintain public trust, struggled to find a balance. Some introduced hybrid models, in which autonomous systems handled routine tasks, while human pilots remained in control during critical phases of flight. Others invested heavily in retraining programs, preparing their pilots for a future in which their role would be fundamentally different. The rise of autonomous technology also had profound implications for air traffic control. The systems that had been introduced in the wake of the collision were now being integrated with AI-driven platforms capable of managing airspace with unprecedented efficiency. These platforms use predictive analytics to anticipate traffic patterns, optimize flight paths, and prevent conflicts before they arose. They were a far cry from the radar screens and voice communications of the past, representing a quantum leap in the way airspace was managed. But they also raised concerns about the potential for over-reliance on technology and the loss of human oversight. Air traffic controllers, many of whom had spent decades honing their skills, found themselves grappling with a new reality in which their expertise was no longer the primary safeguard against disaster. As the industry continued to evolve, it also faced new challenges from outside its traditional boundaries. The skies, once the exclusive domain of commercial airlines and military aircraft, were now crowded with drones, air taxis, and other forms of urban air mobility. These new entrants, driven by advances in electric propulsion and battery technology, promised to revolutionize transportation in ways that had once seemed unimaginable. But they also created a host of regulatory and safety challenges, forcing the industry to rethink its approach to airspace management. The question of how to integrate these diverse and often competing technologies into a cohesive system became a central focus of policymakers and industry leaders. Amidst these changes, the lessons of the mid-air collision remained a guiding force. The tragedy had taught the industry the importance of humility, of recognizing the limits of human and technological capabilities. It had also underscored the need for collaboration, for bringing together the best minds from across disciplines to tackle the challenges of the future. As the industry stood on the brink of a new era, it did so with a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to learning from the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. And so, the story of aviation continued to unfold. a narrative of progress and perseverance, of triumphs and setbacks. It was a story that reflected the best of humanity, our ability to innovate, to adapt, and to overcome. The skies, once a source of fear and uncertainty, had become a symbol of hope and possibility. They were a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, we have the power to rise, to learn, and to build a better future. The mid-air collision had changed flight safety forever, but it had also set the stage for a new chapter in the history of aviation, one defined not by the limitations of the past, but by the boundless potential of the future. 10 years after the mid-air collision that had served as a catalyst for sweeping changes in the aviation industry, the world found itself in the midst of an aviation renaissance. The skies, once a chaotic tapestry of human error and technological limitations, had been transformed into a meticulously orchestrated symphony of innovation and precision. Autonomous aircraft, once a futuristic concept, were now a common sight, seamlessly sharing airspace with traditional planes, drones, and even experimental electric vertical takeoff and landing (eVTOL) vehicles. The industry had not only recovered from the tragedy, but had emerged stronger, more resilient and more ambitious than ever before. Yet as the fourth chapter of this story unfolded, it became clear that progress came with its own set of challenges that would test the very foundations of the new era of flight. The most striking development of this new era was the widespread adoption of urban air mobility (UAM) systems. Cities around the world had begun to embrace the concept of the Skyway, a network of aerial routes designed to alleviate ground traffic and provide faster, more efficient transportation. Electric air taxis, capable of vertical takeoff and landing, buzzed through the skies like futuristic dragonflies, ferrying passengers between rooftops, airports, and designated vertiports. These vehicles, powered by advances in battery technology and lightweight materials, were quieter, cleaner, and more agile than traditional aircraft, making them ideal for urban environments. They represented the next frontier in transportation, a vision of the future that had once seemed confined to the pages of science fiction. But the integration of UAM systems into existing airspace was not without its difficulties. The skies above major cities, already crowded with commercial flights, private planes, and drones, were now being asked to accommodate a new layer of traffic. Air traffic control systems, which had been designed for the relatively predictable patterns of traditional aviation, struggled to manage the dynamic and decentralized nature of UAM operations. The challenge was further compounded by the sheer number of vehicles involved. In some cities, thousands of air taxis were operating simultaneously, each with its own unique flight path and destination. To address this, regulators and industry leaders turned to AI-driven airspace management platforms which used real-time data and predictive analytics to coordinate the movements of all airborne vehicles. These platforms were a marvel of engineering, capable of processing vast amounts of information and making split-second decisions to prevent conflicts. But they also raised concerns about the potential for system failures and cyber attacks, prompting calls for greater oversight and redundancy. The rise of UAM systems also had profound implications for urban planning and infrastructure. Cities that had once been designed around the needs of ground transportation now had to consider the three-dimensional nature of aerial mobility. Rooftops were repurposed as vertiports, complete with charging stations and passenger lounges. Skyscrapers were retrofitted with landing pads, and new buildings were designed with UAM operations in mind. The result was a radical reimagining of the urban landscape, one that blurred the lines between the ground and the sky. But this transformation was not without its challenges. The construction of vertiports and the installation of charging infrastructure required significant investment, and not all cities were willing or able to make the necessary commitments. There were also concerns about noise pollution, privacy, and the equitable distribution of UAM services, particularly in low-income neighborhoods. As UAM systems gained traction, they also sparked a broader conversation about the future of transportation. For decades, the automobile had been the dominant mode of personal mobility, shaping the way people lived, worked, and interacted with their environment. But the rise of air taxis and other forms of aerial transportation challenged this paradigm, offering a new way to think about movement and connectivity. Some experts predicted that UAM systems would eventually replace cars as the primary mode of urban transportation, leading to a future in which the skies were as busy as the streets below. Others were more cautious, arguing that UAM systems would complement rather than replace ground transportation, serving as a niche solution for specific use cases. Regardless of the outcome, it was clear that the transportation landscape was undergoing a seismic shift, one that would have far-reaching implications for society as a whole. Amidst these changes, the aviation industry continued to grapple with the ethical and philosophical questions raised by autonomous technology. The success of autonomous aircraft had demonstrated the potential for machines to outperform humans in certain tasks, but it had also highlighted the limitations of AI. While machines excelled at processing data and executing predefined algorithms, they struggled with the kind of intuitive decision-making that came naturally to humans. This was particularly evident in emergency situations, where split-second judgments could mean the difference between life and death. The industry responded by developing hybrid systems that combine the strengths of humans and machines, allowing each to compensate for the weaknesses of the other. But the question of how much control to cede to machines remained a topic of heated debate, one that would likely persist for years to come. The human element of aviation also underwent a transformation during this period. Pilots, once the undisputed masters of the skies, found themselves adapting to a new reality in which their role was increasingly that of a supervisor rather than a hands-on operator. This shift was not without its challenges. Many pilots struggled with the loss of control and the need to trust machines with tasks they had once performed themselves. But it also opened up new opportunities for collaboration and innovation. Pilots began working more closely with engineers, data scientists, and AI specialists, contributing their expertise to the development of next-generation systems. The result was a more integrated and interdisciplinary approach to aviation, one that leveraged the unique strengths of each discipline to create a safer and more efficient system. As the industry continued to evolve, it also faced new challenges. From the global community, climate change, once a distant concern, had become an urgent priority, forcing the aviation industry to confront its environmental impact. The rise of electric and hybrid electric aircraft offered a promising solution, but it also required significant investment and innovation. Airlines and manufacturers began exploring new propulsion technologies, alternative fuels, and more efficient designs, all with the goal of reducing emissions and achieving carbon neutrality. The transition was not without its difficulties. The infrastructure needed to support electric aircraft was still in its infancy, and the cost of developing and deploying new technologies was prohibitively high for many companies. But the industry remained committed to the goal, recognizing that sustainability was not just a moral imperative, but also a business necessity. The story of aviation, 10 years after the mid-air collision, was one of resilience, innovation, and transformation. It was a story that reflected the best of humanity, our ability to learn from our mistakes, to adapt to new challenges, and to push the boundaries of what was possible. The skies, once a source of fear and uncertainty, had become a symbol of hope and possibility, a testament to the power of human ingenuity and collaboration. The mid-air collision had changed flight safety forever, but it had also set the stage for a new era of aviation, one defined not by the limitations of the past, but by the boundless potential of the future. And as the industry continued to evolve, it did so with a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to building a better, safer, and more sustainable world for generations to come. 15 years after the mid-air collision that had irrevocably altered the course of aviation history, the world stood on the precipice of a new age, a golden era of flight that seemed to defy the limits of imagination. The skies, once a chaotic and perilous expanse, had become a model of efficiency, safety, and sustainability. Autonomous aircraft, urban air mobility systems, and electric propulsion technologies had not only revolutionized air travel, but had also reshaped the way humanity thought about transportation, connectivity, and the very concept of mobility. Yet as the final chapter of this story unfolded, it became clear that the journey was far from over. The aviation industry, now more advanced and interconnected than ever before, faced a new set of challenges that would test its ability to balance progress with responsibility, innovation with ethics, and ambition with humility. The most visible symbol of this new age was the global Skyway network, a vast and intricate web of aerial routes that spanned the planet. This network, the culmination of decades of innovation and collaboration, connected cities, regions, and continents in ways that had once seemed impossible. Autonomous cargo planes crisscrossed the globe, delivering goods with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Electric air taxis zipped through urban skies, transforming the daily commute into a seamless and exhilarating experience. Long-haul passenger flights, powered by hybrid electric engines, offered a quieter, cleaner, and more sustainable alternative to traditional air travel. The Skyway network was more than just a technological achievement. It was a testament to humanity's ability to overcome adversity and build a better future. But the success of the Skyway network also brought with it a new set of challenges. The sheer scale and complexity of the system required constant monitoring and maintenance, placing immense pressure on the organizations responsible for its operation. Air traffic control, once a localized and human-centric endeavor, had evolved into a global, AI-driven enterprise, with algorithms managing the movements of millions of aircraft every day. These algorithms, though highly advanced, were not infallible. Glitches, cyber attacks, and unforeseen interactions between systems posed a constant threat to the stability of the network. To address these risks, regulators and industry leaders implemented a series of safeguards, including redundant systems, real-time monitoring, and international collaboration. But the question of how to ensure the long-term reliability of the Skyway network remained a topic of intense debate. The rise of the Skyway network also had profound implications for society as a whole. The ability to travel quickly and efficiently between cities and continents had transformed the way people lived, worked, and interacted with one another. Remote regions that had once been isolated were now connected to the global economy, creating new opportunities for trade, tourism, and cultural exchange. But this newfound connectivity also raised concerns about inequality and access. While the benefits of the Skyway network were undeniable, they were not evenly distributed. Wealthy nations and individuals reaped the rewards of advanced air mobility, while poorer communities struggled to keep pace. This disparity sparked a broader conversation about the role of aviation in addressing global inequality and ensuring that the benefits of progress were shared by all. As the aviation industry continued to evolve, it also faced growing scrutiny from environmental advocates and policymakers. The transition to electric and hybrid electric propulsion had significantly reduced the industry's carbon footprint, but it had not eliminated it entirely. The production of batteries, the construction of infrastructure, and the operation of aircraft still had an environmental impact, one that could not be ignored. In response, the industry redoubled its efforts to achieve true sustainability, investing in new technologies such as hydrogen fuel cells, bio-based materials, and carbon capture systems. These innovations, though still in their infancy, offered a glimpse of a future in which aviation could coexist harmoniously with the planet. The human element of aviation also underwent a profound transformation during this period. Pilots, air traffic controllers, and other aviation professionals found themselves navigating a world in which their roles were constantly evolving. The rise of autonomous systems had not rendered humans obsolete, but it had fundamentally changed the nature of their work. Pilots became system managers, overseeing complex AI-driven aircraft and intervening only when necessary. Air traffic controllers became data analysts, interpreting the vast streams of information generated by the Skyway network and making high-level decisions to ensure its smooth operation. These changes required a new set of skills and a new way of thinking, forcing the industry to rethink its approach to training and education. Amidst these changes, the lessons of the mid-air collision remained a guiding force. The tragedy had taught the industry the importance of humility, of recognizing the limits of human and technological capabilities. It had also underscored the need for collaboration, for bringing together the best minds from across disciplines to tackle the challenges of the future. As the industry stood on the brink of a new age, it did so with a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to learning from the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. And so, the story of aviation came full circle. What had begun as a tale of tragedy and loss had evolved into a story of resilience, innovation, and hope. The skies, once a source of fear and uncertainty, had become a symbol of humanity's boundless potential. The mid-air collision had changed flight safety forever, but it had also set the stage for a new era of aviation, one defined not by the limitations of the past, but by the limitless possibilities of the future. As the industry looked to the horizon, it did so with a sense of optimism and determination, knowing that the journey was far from over. The skies, once a frontier, had become a canvas on which humanity could paint its dreams, its aspirations, and its vision of a better world. And as the final chapter of this story came to a close, it left behind a legacy of progress, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, we have the power to rise, to learn, and to build a brighter tomorrow.